For the lady! Yes, that's it. We're doing it. We're talking about the Bretonnians, my other favourite Warhammer book, alongside the Vampire Counts, which I talked about recently. Now, it's a bit of a sad mess in front of you, unfortunately, these green models. I played Chaos through most of my Warhammer days. Bretonnians and Forest Spirit Wood Elves were something I was just getting to, right at the very end, pretty much during the end times. Because I liked the sort of the initial stages of the Grand Alliance thing they did, where I could have, these, I called them the Knights of the Green Chapel. And the idea was that they were these sort of knights that lived in a ruined chapel on the edge of the Lauren Forest, and they had occasional alliances with the Dryads. So I was going to play these guys as sort of green and brown and bronze themed knights with Dryad units and tree people and that sort of thing as a combined army. And then the world blew up and they went to live in a drawer. But luckily I'm not the sort of person to sell things, so I've still got them, and we'll hopefully, I'll start getting back to them soon, hopefully. Now, in my Vampire Counts Codex, I was able to reference a few army books ahead to the 7th and 8th edition army books to sort of do some comparisons. Can't do that with the Bretonnians because they never moved on beyond their 6th edition Codex, so I may refer slightly to the earlier one. I'm not familiar with this codex, but it's, since I've got nothing else to compare this army book to, it might, I might just have to. Now, it's a shame that we never moved beyond this one. It's, again, I've complained about laziness and mismanagement in my other videos. This is a good example. But on the other hand, why change perfection? This is already the best codex army book they could have got. So, if you look at the sort of the silver lining, they never ruined it either, like they did with a lot of the other army books. So, we'll get into this. I'm going to probably now do all of the army books in a series like this. I wasn't planning to, but I'm probably going to. But I can definitely say that the Vampire Counts book and this Bretonnian book are my favourites, and they're definitely the ones that I'm the most excited for. Now, some people say that they actually aren't a fan of what this book did to Bretonnia. Some people, you can kind of already tell just from the covers, if you're not familiar with these books. I'm sure you are, though, if you're watching this video. This book was a lot more colourful. It was a little bit less sort of grim than the 6th edition codex. It was quite colourful, quite bright. It was quite hero based. You have loads of heroes in the back here. I'm not going to get into them, but there's multiple pages of all these different heroes. And I think that the theme with this is that it was a bit more just kind of fun chivalry, a bit more, hero based sort of Hero Hammer, chivalry, bright colours, quite a nice realm. And, don't quote me on this because I haven't looked through this book exactly, but I think this might have been before they sort of separated the peasantry from the nobility quite so much in terms of their worship of the lady, but I'm not sure. But certainly this book came around and gave us a very interesting, in my opinion, but quite grim Bretonnian society. And some people, they say they're not a fan of that. I've even seen people say that they straight up don't like this book. They think that it ruined Bretonnians, and they, greatly prefer this one. I'd have to disagree with that, but obviously that's, that's subjective. That's obviously they liked elements of this book that maybe weren't carried over into this book, and that's just a shame. But this book is incredible. I love this book so much. It's one of the classic books. For me, I know I said in my vampires video about being army books that you see in the club box, that maybe belonged to somebody a while ago, and it's your first introduction because you're just at the club and you see the box of the All Terrain and some random books and things. This is definitely one of the ones that I saw earliest, and just looked inside and thought, woo, so much good stuff. It's just interesting to look at. Definitely just, immediately nostalgic for me, the way it looks inside and everything. I'm not sure why I never really played them before. I think I think it was probably just because I wanted to, you know, be the evil Chaos guys. I probably always sort of liked the style of these guys, but didn't want to play just a human faction, because I never really enjoy playing human factions in any game. But I definitely always liked the way that they looked. We'll get into it though. I mean, just already, I'm a bit zoomed out today compared to some other videos I've done, but just already, you know, you can see the sheer colours. You've got the nice heraldry on this page, a really great image with a classic looking citadel castle and the knights riding out. Immediately, you know, grabs you. How can you not just open this and love it already? Really, really great. It isn't quite as themed inside as the Vampire Counts Codex is. It does get a little bit generic maybe later on, but it still looks good. You've got lovely double spread pages of artwork like this with the knights. And then we're going to get into something that I absolutely love, which is these pages here. There's 6 pages like this. You've got this one, this one, and this one. And these are just beautiful, absolutely beautiful, full colour murals depicting the story of Bretonnia. This is, I mean, it's designed to essentially look like the kind of thing you'd see, you know, on a castle wall. I'm pretty sure in Game of Thrones, in the Red Keep, they had that sort of courtyard. They had that sort of courtyard place where the Lannisters live, and it had all the paintings on the wall. I'm pretty sure, but you've probably seen it in other places. It just looks great. I'm going to probably upset people and admit right now off the bat, I have actually bought several of these codexes from eBay over the years because I plan to take these pages out and frame them and have them along a wall. So it's a bit of a desecration, but I think ultimately it's going to be worth it. Now, I'm normally not a fan of these timelines they put in the books. They give you, you know, like 4 pages of just black and white timeline rubbish, and I never really care. You know, most of it's just made up for the book. There's maybe a few real, you know, sort of key things they've sort of snuck in there, but most of the time it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So presenting it like this, where you can read this really lovely thing, and you know, get an idea of the story without having to go on the boring timeline thing. And I think they do still have that sort of black and white time. Yeah, see, here you go. They still have this kind of black and white timeline, but I've never personally liked these kind of double pages of just random stuff. So it's nice they've got this full colour one at the beginning. Now they do have 4 pages, sorry, of these. This is you know, 2 whole pages of heraldry that you can copy if you wish to. I normally don't like these sorts of things in books. I've complained before. I think in my Chaos Space Marines Codex review video, I was talking about how they've got those sort of colouring book Space Marines, where it's just all these identical 2D Space Marines with different colour schemes in. I've always hated those sorts of things. They're a waste of space in the Codex, in my opinion. But this is done in such a nice traditional way. It looks beautiful anyway. It's got the brown sort of parchment backing. Everything's lovely colours. It looks like a legitimate medieval thing, and it just, you know, it pulls it off well, I think, compared to other codexes that sometimes don't do it very well. And then, you know, something else that I also complain about in other codexes, army books and codexes, tends to be the painted model section and the way that they lay out these models, because, you know, they used to, in the earlier 40k codexes and these nice 6th edition codexes, they used to really lay things out nicely, give you scenes with terrain and motion, you know, in a way, and armies laid out. Whereas I feel like recently the newer codexes and army books, they look more and more like a catalogue. You know, it's just white pages with specific pictures, like you know, Games Workshop official website pictures, just on these white pages, literally as a, you know, a catalogue. And I really miss these days when they just lay it out like this, and they'd make it look so inviting. It's so visually interesting. You probably can't, you know, really see on the size that you're looking at on the screen, unfortunately. I might do a zoom in one day and, you know, go through codexes close up, but you can kind of get what I mean. They have everything laid out really nicely, you know, within terrain. You know, you've got the Green Knight in the woods there. the lady on a tower. It just presents the army how you would see it on the table, and it's, you know, it makes them look actually good. This one I've always liked, because they've given these knights at the bottom picture here an actual motion blur to try to make it look like they're rushing through the woodland. I really like this. I think it's a great way of showing all of the different units without making it just kind of a boring catalogue. There's quite a lot of pages doing this though, so I'm not going to go over all of them. Then you get to the general fluff. It's pretty nice. It's not, like I said, it's not quite as interesting as the vampire camp one, but it's still pretty good. You know, you can read this pretty happily. It's got these nice castle pictures on either side, written out kind of like a script. It's quite nice. Land of Chivalry, really fun. And then, you know, one thing that was unique about these Bretonnians is they have their own formations, and in this case it's the lance formation. Most other people would basically just have to use, well, I think all other people really would just have to use their cavalry ranked up, you know, 4 models wide in 6th edition, and then 5 models wide from, you know, 7th edition onwards, in, you know, units, blocks of 8 or 10 or you know, 16 or 15 or, you know, that sort of thing. But the Bretonnians could go 3 wide. They could go 3 wide, and, you know, as many ranks deep. I think you could get up to unit size of 15 for the Bretonnian knights, so you could go 3 wide and 5 deep. And it didn't let the middle ones attack. What it did is it allowed the side knights to attack. It was supposed to represent this column of knights charging through the enemies, so the front 3 could attack, but also all the ones on the sides could attack. And what this meant is that if you had, you know, your standard block of 5 models, you know, you get your 5 front row attacks. This meant that you could get 3 front row attacks, and just in this example already they've only got 3 ranks, but that's the 3 front guys, and then 2 more on each side, so they've got a total of 7 attacks coming out of this unit. And this is a small unit of 9. If you had 12 or even 15, you know, you'd be getting a lot more attacks from all those side guys. So that was, you know, it's a nice formation to get more attacks. And then you have vows. Now there's multiple kinds of vows in this codex. These are a sort of generic vow that knights would take. Some knights have to take these, you know, if they are questing knights or grail knights and that sort of thing. They have it in their profile already, but if you're choosing a character, you know, you could choose that he's going to be a questing character or a grail character and that sort of thing. And they give you various bonuses: immune to psychology, immune to panic caused by peasants and that sort of thing. You know, it's pretty nice. It's a nice way of getting a bit more flavour into the army. It's basically, it's for the most part, it's a case of making the knights immune from running away, because the peasants have also run away. It's pretty much saying, you know, if you have these vows, you know, you don't need to take panic for those units. And on unit standards, in units with the peasant duty do not confer any additional victory points if they're captured, because they're made out of sticks and mud and pig poop. So, you know, I liked how they sort of put everybody in their place. They're quite nice, and there's different vows later on we'll get to. Now, a universal special rule, kind of, again, just for the knights, not for the peasants. You had the blessing of the lady. This was really fun. This was, you know, one of those things that really makes the army charismatic. You could basically choose to go second. If you went second, then you get this automatically, essentially. You know, if you lost the roll-off, you get this automatically. But even if you won the roll-off and you were going to go first, you could choose to go second and basically have your army of knights kneel, and they would receive a ward save. You get a 6+ ward save against everything, and a 5+ ward save against attacks with strength 5 or higher. Now, you know, being Bretonnians, you've got a very expensive army made of probably comparatively small model counts of knights, and so things like range attacks and especially cannons and stone throwers and things, they're going to be a big issue for your knights, you know. So getting something like a 5+ ward save against that type of weaponry, you know, for free essentially. You're missing the first turn, but you know, you have to. It was generally okay to miss the first turn. It allowed you to kind of see where your opponent was going, what they were planning to do. You likely wouldn't get any charges off in your first turn unless they really hoofed it over to you. But it wasn't the end of the world taking the first turn, and I think that for getting a ward save against ranged attacks that are really going to punish your knights, I think it was a pretty good ability that you had, and you chose to do it. If you weren't second, it was an ability that you just got for no, but negative essentially. And if you weren't first, it was it's a choice. You could steam on ahead without praying for the blessing if you wanted to, and that's fine. Let me go through the army codexes now. The army list, sorry. Lots of nice stuff. But I'm sure you know everything that's in the codex. I'm not going to go over it. I like the Grail. What's it called? The Grail Relique. That's a nice idea. A dead old knight kind of propped up on his skeleton horse with these battle pilgrims, carrying him around. If I was doing a campaign, I'd be always tempted to make it, like the last character or something. So that you always kind of know who they are and you have a bit of a story if you maybe had been using a character for a while and then they died. It's definitely pretty thematic, I think, to have one of those guys being carried around. It's just a nice idea. A nice idea that even in death, this knight's done so much good for the realm that he's revered like a kind of mobile shrine. It's really fun. Now, I might just talk about the Bretonnian society a little bit. I'm not going to do too much because this isn't necessarily a video about Bretonnian lore, but I think it's worth talking about, seeing as I mentioned it earlier at the beginning of the video, how some people preferred this sort of book, and how this book brought kind of a new layer of a grimness to the setting. What you have essentially is hyper feudalism, and it makes for a really interesting human society, especially one that is it's good. It's supposed to be a good race in the sense that it doesn't just exist to kill and destroy everything like other sort of evil races do, but it's deeply flawed, and that's what's interesting to me. It's what people like about the Imperium, I think, in 40k. And it's definitely something I like about the Bretonnians. It's just more interesting to have a flawed society than a just full-on goody two-shoes, perfect utopian society. And this hyper-feudalism, it's really fun. There's such a strong distinction in class between the nobility and the peasantry in this. It's such a huge distinction, which the knights essentially consider just the order of things and the way things are supposed to be, because they're the defenders of the realm. They are the ones who ride out to battle and put their lives on the line to defend the realm. And if they're doing that, potentially risking their lives, anytime a beastman, warband turns up, or an orc horde turns up, or a dragon or anything, they are the ones who ride out and fight it and risk their lives. Therefore, as the masters of the realm, they're entitled to live in this complete luxury, while the lazy, ungrateful peasants, they deserve to just live in their little stone hovels, sleeping with their own pigs, starving with no money and basically no prospects besides working themselves to death by about 25 while inbreeding. And they just think that's the order of things. We fight for the realm. We deserve to live in high society like this. You are, lazy, coddled peasants. All you need to do is grow crops, grow potatoes all day. Why are you complaining so much all the time? You don't need to do literally anything. And therefore, they sort of justify this really lopsided society they've got. And the way it's so crazy. It's like you talk back to a knight. If he's generous, you'll have your tongue cut out. If he's not generous, you'll be hanged. If you touch a knight, if he's generous, you'll have your hand cut off. If he's not generous, you'll be hanged. A young, I don't want to swear, but a young, not very nice person knight, if he wanted to, could just ride drunkenly into a settlement, kill a bunch of peasants, and there's nothing they could do. Nobody would care. They just have to put up with it. There's absolutely they're so far beneath these Bretonnian knights that it's just it's crazy. It's so fun for a setting, and it follows over into their religion. The peasant class are not allowed to pray to the lady. They're not allowed to sully her good name with their disgusting peasant mouths. They're not allowed to pray to her, and anyone caught doing it is punished severely, probably by having something cut off of them or being hanged. She is a deity just for the knights, because they're the only ones who are worthy of her. And that's fun. That's a fun idea, to have an entire land, an entire country basically, where you say, you know, that only some people are allowed to pray to this goddess, you know, because you're literally going to sully her with your filthy existence if you, if you bother her by praying. That's a fun idea to me. I do think that's a fun idea. And it's always been an interesting confliction reading about, you know, the ways that the knights are tyrannical and cruel and really are just oppressive, horrible, you know, villains essentially. They seem like villains a lot of the time, but they do it with this complete virtue and belief in chivalry and their own righteousness, and that this is how things are supposed to be. And, you know, they're not bad, they're actually quite generous, because the peasants are allowed, you know, 1 potato per day, when, you know, if they wanted to, they can make them live on half a potato per day. So they're really nice. It's just a really interesting, you know, perspective to me, and I've always enjoyed it. It's fun to read about too in the novels. There's not as many novels about the Bretonnians as I would like, but there's a few, and they're again really interesting because you're exploring this society, especially in the Callard quadrilogy. Because a lot of the other Bretonnian books are maybe set outside of Britannia, or sort of in and out, but the Callard series, you're actually in Britannia reading all about it. But anyway, I've talked enough about stuff that doesn't matter. We'll get now to the virtues of the chivalric knight. Now these are similar to the vampiric bloodline powers, where they're things you can take as well as war gear for your lords and heroes. Unfortunately, like with the bloodlines, they do eat into your points. You can't have, you know, 100 points of artifacts and relics and magical items, and then, you know, another 50 points, say, from here. They do count into your 100 points or your 50 points, which is a shame. I've always kind of wanted them for the, you know, the vowels or the bloodlines or whatever it might be. I've always kind of wanted them to count as being a separate thing, but they're not. But it's okay. They're basically a bunch of special rules for you to choose from. They're not, you know, they don't directly affect your stat lines in any way, I don't think, like a magical item would. But they are they're essentially special rules you can buy for yourself. You know, like one, you can buy the virtue of purity, which will give you the bonus, the benefit of the prayer, even if you didn't bother to pray at the beginning of the game. And it's always a 5+ regardless of the strength of the missiles coming in. That's good, that's really good. Not going to affect your whole army obviously, but it's nice to get on an important unit if you don't want to sacrifice the first turn. You can have the virtue of empathy, where you're allowed to fight on foot with the peasants. Normally you are not allowed to fight on foot as Bretonnian, but if you take this virtue, you can fight on foot, and the peasant units can use the general's leadership within 12 inches instead of 6, which is helpful. Reroll failed break tests, killing blow, stubborn, but can't join any friendly units, so that's not too great actually. Plus D6 inches to the first charge that they declare. That's quite good, first D6 inches to the first charge that you can play, that you declare. Virtue of confidence. When you're in a challenge, you can reroll all failed rolls to hit and to wounds. That's a really good one if you had a nice magical weapon as well. Loads of great stuff, really nice things to have. And then we get into the blessed heirlooms of Britannia. Lots of pretty nice stuff. Lots of really nice stuff. You've got a lance that automatically hits if you charge with it, so that's pretty cool. You'd just be dishing out a bunch of strength +2 on the charge, so your strength 6, you'd be a bunch of strength 6 hits also hitting. That's really nice. The worm lance gives you I believe it's a once per game breath attack. You can unleash the fire from the worm lance. Really cool, it's so cool. The Gromril Great Helm, you get a 6+ armor save and reroll any failed armor saves, so that's really nice. If you had, you know, heavy armor on a barded warhorse, that would be a 3+ save already. You know, you take this, that's a 2+ save. You take a shield, that's a 1+ save, and you get to reroll failed armor saves. So, you know, that's pretty good. That is pretty good. I think you could even take the oh no, you couldn't. No, so you know, you'd have a 1+ armor save, rerolling saves, brilliant. And that's only 30 points, so you could still buy, you could still buy even the silver lance and hit automatically or anything. Really nice stuff. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's so many. This is back when they, like I said, gave you whole pages of things to look through. Really nice, loads of useful stuff. My favourite is the Banner of the Lady, and this was FAQ'd to be even better. It's 100 points. It's one of the big ones. All enemy units with at least one model in base contact with the bearer of the Banner of the Lady get no combat bonus for ranks. That's pretty great. If you've got your unit of, let's say 15 knights, you've got a rank bonus of well, I think the maximum rank bonus is +3. So you'd have your maximum +3 rank bonus, +1 for your standard, +1 for charging. If you've taken maybe the war banner, that's another +1. Maybe the BSB's there, +1 again. And your opponent basically has no ranks, 1 rank, and it wouldn't count for anything. And like I said, I believe they FAQ'd this, and they said that they FAQ'd it so that the Skaven didn't count their number of models. I think the Skaven had some kind of rule about counting, number of models, not just ranks but number of models too. And it said, they don't count their number of models. They don't count any of their special rules. And I think I used it maybe once in game, and my knights were pretty much just making these big units of like 50 Skaven, run away pretty much automatically because they had no bonus for whatever the Skaven bonus was. Again, I can't remember exactly what the Skaven bonus did, but it made them essentially fearless. I think they had no limit on rank bonus. I don't know what it was. But the point is, it was incredible, and my friend hated it and thought it was stupid that they had a banner specifically to screw over the Skaven. But, that's pretty fun. And I think we're getting towards the end now. You've got the unit choices. Oh, I'll talk about the special characters, I think. The Green Knight, the Fey Enchantress, and King Luen. Now, I never got to use King Luen because he's about 800 points, 728 points. So that was definitely more than I could ever afford in a game. The Fey Enchantress, don't think I ever used her, but I always wanted to because she's got some really nice rules. The Green Knight, however, I did get to use him a couple times. He was always a huge favourite of mine. He's an ethereal character. Normally an ethereal character tends to be something pretty much trash. Not in function, but in stat line, like a Wraith. And it's like strength and toughness 2, weapon skill 3, 2 wounds, 2 attacks, that sort of rubbish. But it's made up for by the fact that it's ethereal. This guy is a very good character, and he had ethereal, which is absolutely incredible. He has, I think, about a 3+ armor save, maybe even a 2+ armor save. He's got a 5+ ward save. The Dolorous Blade was great. You could choose to either get D6 attacks or have +2 to a strength. But it didn't make him strike last, so it was essentially a great weapon. He'd be striking with 4 attacks at strength 6. Without striking last, be striking at initiative 6, or he could strike with 10, 4+ D6 attacks, at initiative 6. Pretty great. He can't be broken, but if he's beaten in combat, he'll essentially suffer wounds, by each point that he's beaten by. So a bit like a demon or an undead, I suppose. And one of the nice rules about him was that he would basically pop out of terrain if you had any forests or rivers or ponds or anything like that on the table. He could just deploy out of there, so you could get him immediately behind your enemy's army or something. If they had maybe some war machines, he was perfect to go kill those war machines, or even just get a good rear charge, because again, nobody wants to be hit by an ethereal character in the rear. Even less effective knights like the Wraiths are good for doing that to people. Having a full-on character who is very killy and also quite tough to do that to you, it would be devastating. And even if he is killed, he can come back. He can come back. The first time on a 3+, then on a 4+, then on a 5+, and then on a 6+. So he's irritating to get rid of. And he only costed 275 points. For me, he's one of the best characters in the game. Very, very useful and cost effective for those points. you know, there's not maybe as much to talk about in this book as the Vampire Counts book. That definitely had a lot more in the way of, you know, in-depth things, both in the sense of, you know, all the bloodlines and the stuff you could talk about with the bloodlines, and it had its own special army list section in the back that I went through, saying, you know, if you had a Blood Dragon army or a Necrarch army and so on. This doesn't have that sort of thing, so there's not quite as much in the way of army flavour and army customizability and things to talk about right now, but that doesn't matter. Would it have been nice to have maybe a themed army, or at least a special rule for the various different cities, from Musalon to Coron and that sort of thing? It would have been nice, but it's not a downside. It's such a good codex. For me, it's one of the most iconic army books from Warhammer. I would just say from the entirety of Warhammer, it's one of the most, if not the most, iconic army book. Maybe because it never got one past 6th, so for all those years people using their 7th and 8th edition codexes, you were still seeing this one around, so it's kind of burned into your mind. But I mean for me, the visual style of these of the Bretonnians, it's just perfect. You know, it's absolutely perfect for people that just want that, you know, a traditional sort of medieval army mixed with a really inviting element of fantasy. This whole, you know, the Grail quest and the Lady of the Lake and all that sort of thing. It's so good. It's so good. It's, you know, compared to something like the Empire. I enjoy the Empire now. I have got into the Empire now. But at the time, I really thought they were boring. I didn't see much going on with the Empire. And I thought that the Bretonnians did a much better job actually of representing an interesting human faction than the Empire did, which is why I always thought it was kind of strange that the Empire were the sort of popular one. But you know, that's just how it is. I don't know, you know, exactly what appeals to people, but for me, these just had a niche. You know, they had a niche, they had an itch. A lot of people, similar to the Tomb Kings and some other factions, basically say that their downfall and their problem was that they were in some ways the least imaginative and the most sort of direct copy of a real life element, you know, Arthurian legend and just standard sort of early medieval Europe. And that's kind of true, I guess. It is one of the more real life comparable races, like the Tomb Kings just being Egyptian skeletons. But for me personally, they were fantasy enough and interesting enough. They had enough going for them that, yes, even though they look kind of realistic, I mean, partly that's why I think they look so nice, but and they're blatantly just basically Arthurian legends, you know, based on Arthurian stuff. They've done such a good job still making it its own faction and its own story that, you know, fits pretty well into Warhammer. They definitely did it well enough to the point that I don't just see it as a boring you know, copy of something or insert of just, you know, real life stuff into a fantasy. I think that it was good enough to not just be boring in that sense, but I suppose that's people's opinion. I know a lot of people did feel that way, but you know, I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame that they never really got the recognition that I think they deserve. We do have the Old World coming out now. I'm assuming that they might get some new stuff. I'm not sure. And in addition to not really being sure that they're going to get new stuff, I think if they did get new stuff, I don't think that it would be exactly what people, or you know, me at least, would really think of as Bretonnia and would really enjoy as Bretonnia. I think that they would definitely change the style significantly. I think that it's a few hundred years before the current day, and I think that I just feel like it would be different. I don't think that it would be exactly like this. I think that it would be different in some way, and I'm sure that it would be just different enough to sort of irritate traditional players, to the point that it didn't really seem like the same faction anymore. I mean, if you see what they're doing with, Kislev, it's nice to see Kislev back, but immediately all of the previews we've had are things that don't actually exist. You know, from the female ice guard with actual ice weapons, you know, guarding the Ice Queen. They don't exist. The giant, you know, elemental ice bears and things, they don't exist. The cannons on sledges, they don't exist. You know, all the stuff we've seen so far for Kislev is completely made up new stuff. So, you know, if that's the case for Bretonnians, maybe we get a bunch of made up new stuff that didn't really exist, and that would affect the way that traditional players, you know, feel about the army. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, as long as you've got these cool looking knights riding on horses, as long as they don't mess that up, I think that it could still be pretty good. I'm just hesitant to think about them actually suddenly bringing back, you know, a whole range of models that they've axed. I don't see it happening. Some people do. Some people say it's obvious they're going to just bring back the whole range. They have the molds, they have the ability, they don't need to pay for any molds, they have them. It's obvious they're going to just bring back the whole range. I disagree. I think that that's too optimistic. I think that's a bit wish listy. I don't think we're going to just, you know, get the whole faction brought back. I hope we do. I hope we do. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that's exactly what happens. But I think that's a bit too optimistic. I think if we do see Bretonnian models, they will likely be quite different, and, you know, probably stuff that you haven't really seen before. But we'll have to see. I don't want to drone on too much. I have been trying to pad the video a little bit, seeing as there is a bit less to talk about than the Vampire Counts Codex, but hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully I'll get these painted at some point as well, and, you know, you'll be able to actually see a full Bretonnian army from this channel. It's definitely on the list. But for now, I think that does it for me. What do you think of this book? Do you like this book? Do you like this army book? What do you think about Bretonnia? Let me know. I'll be happy to hear it from you. And I'll see you with another fantasy video. Like I said, going to do some more of these now. Probably work my way through all of these books because they're so good. I like them all, mostly. Yeah, so we'll see. I'll probably see you in another video on maybe we'll do the Chaos one next or something. I'll probably do the Chaos one next. Anyway, bye for now.